activities I can't manage. So I always feel that today's millennials are far, far, smarter, they have got far brain power than what we had at their age. And you all are nothing different. I think it's my privilege that I am here, having to at least share my little bit of thoughts and experiences, whatever I have learned and whatever I have gained. And it will be great if we interact more during this course of this session. Now, Debashish tells me about successful life and all. I do not know definition. What is the definition of success? Very honestly, success is a very relative term. I feel so. Success for some, maybe having a cushy life, and having dal chawal and listening to some ghazal or listening to Kishore Kumar is also success. Success is also having lots of money into your bank and sleeping every day, having great things about thinking that I am loaded with some, I'm very solvent. That is also success. So success to me is very relative. Success to me is when you are contented. I would like to use the word contented. That I am happy, I am contented. So that is success to me. Uh, I would like to share a little bit about the journey, uh, about my journey, because it's not the same as what probably today you millennials are probably going to see, because we were born in an era where not there was no Google, there was no internet, there was not an Excel sheet also, there was not a word, MS Office didn't exist. I'm just talking from that era when we started that journey. We were actually we were doing some bit of IT through those days we used to call it Lotus 123 Notes, DBase 3 Plus, WordStar. You may not have ever heard of it also. That got graduated as MS Office, later, of course. So that was the era. That was also an era when probably the softer skills of HR was not the the skills that anybody would look forward to in an organization. Those days, HR was not defined as HR. Those days, when we started our careers as management trainees, we were more personnel managers. You may have heard this word before, personnel managers. What were we doing? We were working in manufacturing units, and we were managing blue collar bargainable unions, and we used to have our show going on. Those days were the learning days. So what was our USP those days? What was our USP was, are we a good negotiator? Are we good in communication skills? Can we bargain properly? Do we have, can I manage the canteen? Can I manage a show of 1,000 people? If tomorrow 200 people come to my room and ask for something, can I handle that? If there's a crisis, am I a good manager? We have seen that era to start with as a management trainee, compared to what probably you all will start with now. Now, the entire, of course, the diversification happened, and we are in a different world altogether today. So what I feel has been successful for me is that I have personally not stopped my learning curve from developing myself on an everyday platform. That for me has been my motto. I go to office every day till today. Today we are in lockdown, but we are in virtual office. But I have a small pad with me, a mental pad, I would say. And what did I learn today? That is important. So if I would give you one mantra today, that if you see, if I have been able to achieve a little bit of what I started my journey with, I would say I have achieved a good learning curve. I learned because I was born in a different era, learned what IT is all about, learned what the soft skills of HR is all about. It's not reading in the books only, it's learning and implementing. I think those were some of the points that actually helped me build my journey of nearly 24, 25 years. Because I worked in manufacturing industries, I have worked in pharma industries, I have worked in large conglomerates like Reliance Industries. I have worked nearly 10 years of my life with Taj Mahal hotels. So all this was only possible. One has to be mentally adaptable, flexible, and one should keep the learning curve going on a day-to-day matter. I think that's what the mantra is What at least that taught me, at least for a day to day. I will give this as a takeaway for you all if you would like to adapt to that. Devashish.
Uh, so, uh, so Sandeep, as I see, today's industry, today's economy, and today's market versus what it was earlier. How do I see so many jobs going every day. A lot of industries removing people. Telecom has literally shut down. Uh, you talk of manufacturing has gone down. Post-COVID, hotels, industries, restaurant business has gone down. Uh, I do not know when they will evolve. The economy is really, really cracking in India. And on top of that, we have our natural calamities at various locations pan India. It's not a great phase to run also. And in midst of that, we have young children like this uh, trying to cope up, trying to learn, trying to develop themselves as future leaders of tomorrow, which is very, very uncertain. So I have faced a question from one of this intern named Akanksha that what do you think? Should we get any job or should we become an entrepreneur? What should be a future for this kind of environment which it is? So I asked her to wait for today's forum so that she can hear from the CHRO mouth that how corporate CHRO sees this environment and how to cope up with the change. What's your thought about this?
Devashish, it's a big ticket call, I would say. I will say a little bit about 2008 to begin with before I go into 2020. 2008, when you all know when 26/11 happened, and the Taj Hotel got hijacked by a bunch of terrorists, and of course in other places of Mumbai also the same things happened. Mm, luckily or unluckily, I do not know. I was also a part of that on that day inside the hotel for 47 hours. So after that episode, the entire economy went for a complete downside. You all know that. And the Indian economy took a big beating for nearly about two years. All industries, of course, travel and aviation and travel did take the maximum beating, but every industry was there's a huge gloom to see those trend lines and all that. However, what we did is that we bounced back as an economy. Now that was 2008 to 2010. Now this is a COVID world. This is 2020, a COVID world. The COVID world actually has brought in a completely new paradigm of challenges, I would say, and every employer is now looking differently to a talent. When I say differently to a talent, means maybe uh, some of the regular jobs which can be done sitting at home will be probably shifted on a work from home status. It may be it may be given to a regular employee. It may be outsourced also. Those work can be done outsourced from home. People don't need to come to offices. So if 50% of a population doesn't have to come to an office, I'm not talking of the IT sector where probably 90% needs not come to the office. I'm talking of, let's say, manufacturing come probably a sector which where there is a lot of people to people connect, and if 50% don't have to come to office, imagine what is going to happen. Now, there's going to be real estate prices will shrink because offices are not required, spaces are not required. People will work from home. So, what will happen to their pay? Do they have to be given various allowances which are actually given by companies when they actually travel up and down from home and all that? Now, what happens to new youngsters? What is that the company will look forward for a new youngster today? Skills will matter. Let me tell you, your unique skills will matter a lot. What is it that you bring to the table? Are you different? Is important. That's what I read it. If I am going to the campus tomorrow, I would like to hire, if this individual is going to be or bring in some differentiation to the crowd that you already have. So, are you different means it can be anything. It can be, depends on the person, depends on the company, what they're looking at. A company may be looking at probably some people with great analytical skills. So, do you have that? Other than a company may be looking at somebody with a lot of energy, positivity, so various companies will look into 20 other unique skills to it. So what I suggest, you have to ask yourself in the mirror, what is that unique skill I have, other than of course my mark sheet, my CGPA and my grades and all that. What is it that I have as a unique skill which I can bring to the table? I think that's number one. Number two is that we all do our MBAs, we all do our engineering just to get a job. I think that should not be the end motto of everyone. Personal, being an entrepreneur, as Devashish was within the lines, I caught the word entrepreneur. Why not? This is the time actually for people to come up with entrepreneurship, people to bring in the quality that they have, and you can all there can be a group of youngsters like you all building startups, and you never know where you can reach. But for doing that, you need to have the idea. You just can't be doing it in just a you know canteen chat. It has to have an idea. The idea has to have some logic. The logic has to be backed with some propositions, and it should be have a turnaround time. That's important. So that's it. That's for the people who want to be an entrepreneur, because the world is now going to open up with newer possibilities. The earlier possibilities of the world is probably going to have a little bit of shift and regear, and the world will move into some newer possibilities. And that is where I think today's youngster, I see, it's not a dull world. It's going to be a world of newer opportunities. Probably those opportunities which you probably thought existed may go for a little bit of retweaking into something newer. The post-COVID world, I feel, is going to throw up opportunities. And I know Devashish also for a long time. He was a corporate honcho himself, and he rose up to the ladder at of very very renowned companies. One of them I remember is definitely Vodafone. But he I think is he's doing great with being an entrepreneur himself and moving on from the corporate world. The issue is that he had a plan. That is what I'm trying to say. So you need to have a plan followed with uh, due diligence done. You should have a turnaround time, and you should make the effort, which is on the right direction if you want to be an entrepreneur. And if you want not to be an entrepreneur, then you should also look at what is the unique skill that you have, and you should play around that skill and develop that skill, because future hires are going to be on the skills and what you bring to the table. That's for sure. If you may get a job, mind you, but you need to go forward with that job and grow in life. That's also important. Getting a job is just not the only thing in life. I think getting a job, learning in that job, growing in that job, developing work, and that then your career goes for a next level of success. I hope I have been able to answer this query, Dinesh.
Thanks, Sandeep. That was quite an enriching answer and answers a couple of questions these youngsters have in mind. Uh, now, one more question which haunts me really is these guys, when they go for an interview or when they want to become an entrepreneur, definitely they have to create and show their unique differentiators, how they are different than others in this world. And as an HR head, you would look forward to such people to choose from the various masses. Now, there are two issues, which I find these guys are facing. How do I know what is my unique differentiator? That is one. So, what is that unique thing? Now, how will I know? How will I, if I reflect, do I really know what my differentiator is? That is one. Second is post-COVID world. In my, I might be wrong. In my judgment or in my view, any job or being an entrepreneur or any job role will have a problem statement in mind. An organization will try to solve one problem statement in his organization through a recruitment. What is that unique problem they are going to hire this person for to solve? Now, it is very important for that person who's going for an interview or becoming an entrepreneur to understand that why is the interview at all happening? What is that unique thing that organization wants to put on table? What are the key criteria this guy should go through to understand what the interview, why is the interview happening? What is this interview and what is the problem statement the organization has? Is a question which I have in mind. And the traditional way of getting in from a campus to corporate as of yesterday versus tomorrow, will they see any differences?
Yeah, so what I see, Devashish, is that there are some two folds to this question. I try to answer from my limited knowledge that I have, but I hope I can enlighten some of you on this. See, when if there's going to be definitely a relook into the entire hiring process, whether it's campus or whether it's people going to hire laterally, either of the two. So, say let's take campus for a moment, because campus is going to be definitely one aspect which many companies would look inward. Do I have to hire so many MTs or whatever they name it, engineering trainees or graduate trainees? Do I have to hire so many this year at least? Can we park it? Can we keep it aside? Can we just defer it to the next say 1 year more? That is one possibility some companies would definitely do. Because if you see 2021 as a business year, I'm going short term to mid term to long term. And I'm now addressing short term. Short term 2021 as a business year today, the quarter one is completely washed out. That is April, May, June for most of the companies. Now, but does the company's fixed costs get washed out? No. Does the company's vendor costs get worked out? No. Does the company have to not pay salaries? Yes. So company's cost has remained fixed. Company's revenues have not come. So as a result, if one quarter goes for the company, at the end of 2021, sometime in the month of April, March, end of 21, when you do the books, final accounts, majorly most of the companies will not show. Most of the companies, I'm saying, will not show the same type of scale of business as they did in 2018-19. Now, what does that indicate? Your either business is flat or your business has gone downwards. So if it goes downwards for a moment, your multiple ratings will decrease. Number one, you will look inwards into your own costs because you need to keep your margins of profit and the gap there. So how will you do that? If your revenues are not going up, you need to look inwards towards cost. And what is a cost today? Even manpower cost is a huge cost. Some industries go to the extent of only 20% of manpower cost. Some industries have got 9%, 10%, 6%, depends. So it's a fixed cost. Now, when I go to now management campuses or management hires, some companies, excuse me, may think twice that, do I have to hire 50 MTs as I did last time? That can be a possibility. Can I do with 25? Can I do with 30? Now, it depends again on the situation the company is currently. If the company is going for a cadre change, for example, sometimes the company goes for a cadre change of people. Like we are going in one of our divisions as cadre change because we feel that most of the people are in the 45 to 55 age. So in the next 5 to 7 years, if we don't take fresh people or lateral hires, our succession planning won't be in the right structure. So this is one company, but every company may not think like that. So there is definitely, as Devashish rightly said, there is going to be a strain on campus hires. It may not fly to the extent that probably it happened last year. That's one possibility because companies, other than probably IT companies, uh, the other companies may be a little muted here compared to the IT companies. However, IT companies will also see how is the business proposition going to come? Now here, I will give you a silver lining. Let me tell you that by September, October, we expect certain businesses, we expect certain world businesses to also shift a little focus and to India. It may not be instantaneous, but there is a possibility of some businesses slightly moving towards this part of the globe, especially our country. Now, if that happens, that is the silver lining which I see. But immediately it will not happen. Again, I'm telling you, it may not happen in this financial year at all. But I'm saying something maybe we may come to know sometime in September, October, that a few businesses, a certain fraction of it may shift to this part of the globe. So that's the silver lining for India also. So everything is not ruled out, is what I'm trying to say. So there is a possibility of a little bit of a blip in hiring, which is probably bound to happen in most companies. However, there's a silver lining. If that happens, the first point which I said can get minimized. I hope I've been able to answer that part. Number two, when it comes to say, Devashish, your second one was about campus to corporate, right? That part, right?
Correct.
Right. So, what is campus and what is corporate? I think everybody is matured enough here to understand multiple factors. However, corporate is a little different than what is going to be compared to what campus is currently. See, every big or large and matured organization has a campus to corporate connect, and corporate, when you come in, definitely there can be, you will probably get demystified to a large extent, because currently in campus it's quite a, it's big fun. You guys are chilling, I would say, and you are enjoying your life a lot. Corporate, definitely for the first 3 to 6 months, it will not be that it will be good. You will be under a mentor and you will definitely learn. But after 6 months, you will be questioned and you will be accountable for that. And that's where your journey begins as a professional. Because every decent company never expects a management trainee or a graduate trainee to just come and deliver. We are aware of it. But we expect a person coming from the especially from the campus, to have that basic analytical and matured skills to grasp the business knowledge and the sense of business, of what that business is all about and what he or she is going to deliver and be accountable for. That is something we expect from you guys. And what we need you to deliver is, after 6 months, you need to start really rolling up your sleeves, taking accountability of the role that you have, and deliver. I think that's a fair bit of ask from the corporates. Most of the corporates do like that. So what you need to probably get mentally prepared is that whichever company you get a nod into a job also, whichever company you actually get into and you accept it, you need to know business. What is the business of the company? So your induction is very important. Just don't take induction to write in a piece of pad and all that. Ask questions. The more you ask questions, the more you know about that business. Because in an induction, you'll be going through multiple functional heads or multiple business areas. So what you need to do is ask questions. See, a person who knows the business is actually a more equipped person who probably is superficial. And that is going to be a measure of your learning curve, and that is going to be a measure for your success in that company, wherever you join. I think that is what is the bridge that is going to happen from a campus to a college. Devashish.
Thanks, Sandeep. Brilliant piece of thought. At this juncture, I would put the group open. You can ask any questions you want, anyone to Sandeep. You will not get such opportunities every time. So I know the first question is the most difficult one, but please ask whatever is in your mind. Please speak out and ask questions to him.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, sir. This is Sukrit.
Hi,
Sir,
Sukrit. Carry on.
yeah, my question is that since in my college we got to know that there's another industrial revolution which is coming up, which we call as the Industry 4.0, which in which automation would be even more higher and robots would take up most of your factory jobs. So that essentially means that we'll see a lot of job losses. Now they say that this particular industrial revolution is supposed to create more jobs, but initially, as we all have experienced till now, first there was this industry, first there was the mechanization which happened, then the industrial revolution come up, then there was this computer revolution which happened, the IT revolution. So there is going to be resistance to all this, because some of the older people especially, who can't change themselves according to the need of the hour, can't be skilled again. So there's going to be resistance to all this. How do you think that companies should go about it, and how we can actually prevent large scale job losses? Because there is something which is going to happen. Especially in India, we saw it in case of banks. The government banks, there were huge protests against, when computers were introduced in the early 90s. So there were huge protests against it. So how we can actually deal with such a thing?
Supreet, I think it's a very nice question. It's a question for the future. That's what I read it. I'll answer it to you in two parts. One part is that, India is a massive country with a large population, 1.3 billion for people. So, yes, there is a probability, which will always stay, that it is going to be labor intensive in nature. So India fits the bill for manufacturing also. India fits the bill also for retail and services. And of course, IT is already there. Now, this is one part of the question, that India fits the bill to the world I'm talking about. Now comes the question of, one cannot do away with the fact that the world is going through a lot of artificial intelligence. If you see today, you're all using smartphones. So the smartphones, you've got a lot of app in your smartphone which actually, through artificial intelligence, tells you. Say for example, if you are looking at certain things in the net, probably some other feature will come and ask you this is also happening. That means Facebook, or maybe I'm just giving examples, other applications that actually got the AI already in place to understand what you are actually surfing. So they will feed you with all of that content. So what I say is that AI is already there. You cannot deny it because it's now a part of your everyday life. Number two, you all definitely will be in the age of a lot of robotics, a lot of bots, a lot of machine learnings, and a lot of AI. That's definitely going to be you are definitely going to be in that era. Okay, like we were in the era of manufacturing of those days. We moved from the era of manufacturing and sales to IT, to now we are going into the era which I just described. Now comes the fact of resistance, which you are talking. Yes, India is a country where lot of there's going to be, but the resistance the strength of the resistance will be much less compared to what it used to be in the eastern days. Why I'm saying, because people have understood a lot. Today the world, the where the world is moving, actually we can see it in a click of our button. Yesterday it was not so. Today we know what's happening in the world. So today there is knowledge. Knowledge makes a person attuned. There is definitely going to be a upskill on learning, in the sense that if I am probably in my 40s and 50s and I have to learn on machine learning which I don't know, I better learn. You get the point. So the companies have to adopt, because if you have to be cost conscious, if you have to be efficient, if you're ensuring productivity going forward, you have to achieve and adapt to the new age of learning. So we'll have a balanced way of looking into it. I'll answer it in a balanced way. So there's going to be resistance, I would say much less. The the government will have to play some bit of popularity card somewhere. In the manufacturing setups, wherever robotics will be used, there is going to be union resistance, but not to the extent what used to be. In the IT sector, if you see, machine learning is already in place. So in the retail sector, there will be robots also working. In restaurants, you will have a lot of robots serving you. Okay, there'll be in airports. You may not have so many kiosks of people. You may have robots serving. So this is going to be the order of the day. Okay, so and we will have to adapt. So coming to you all now, you all probably you are the millennials who are going to probably address these issues. So jobs will be redefined. Jobs will definitely be there. It will be redefined. So that's why I said you need to learn every day. I use the word in the initial stage that your learning curve has to be there. So today, whatever is the need of the hour is something you are already learning. But tomorrow, whatever will be the need of the hour, it is also advisable for you to learn, adapt. So the person who is flexible in the mind, who can adapt, who are great in learning, okay, will definitely surge ahead in the future game. I hope I have been able to answer a little bit of your that part of your question, Sukhpreet.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, go to the next question, anyone?
Hi, Sandeep. Shazneen here.
Hi,
Uh,
Shasni.
Hi. My question is with respect to redefining of roles and jobs. What I've observed is in a recent trend that companies are not looking at qualifications and they look out for more experienced people even for the most basic jobs. See, even for an entry level job, for example, if I look at the HR field, so if I'm looking at a role of HR operations or something what a management trainee would have done initially, now they would look out for people who have at least 3 to 5 years of experience to do that particular role. And in such a case, the kind of opportunities we were getting have reduced. So, how do we tackle this situation? And how can we be prepared for it? And how do we go about what do we do now?
Well, Shajneen, again, I'll answer your question. It's not en masse that's happening because it's maybe restricted to a certain. I'm sure you're telling with some experience restricted to a certain companies maybe. So en masse is not the thought process that I would read to. However, today talent is in abundance today in the market. That's a fact, and that's a fact today that there is an enormous amount of talent in the market compared to the number of probably jobs in the market. As a result, this is a sad situation, let me tell you. So there's always a demand supply gap, and here the supply is more than the demand. So as a result, today, to answer your question, some organizations maybe taking this route of taking experienced 2 3 year experienced person for a job, only because probably the organization doesn't want to go through the entire process of making somebody learn, which I feel is very narrow-minded, which I feel is very myopic in nature. But maybe some organization like those may be thinking very short term. But that is not what the entire I wouldn't say majority of the organizations think, because that is only limited to a very short. But if they're doing it, I would say it's very short term and very myopic in nature, and that is not going to be a very long term strategy for me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any next question? Yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, hi sir. I have another question for you. So,
Yes, Sukrit, tell me.
this basically comes from a little research which I did. So, I was working on this research on ready-made garment industry. It was basically a comparative study between Bangladesh and India. Now, as we know, Bangladesh is the second highest exporter of ready-made garments in the world
Yeah.
versus China. Now, again, this came to my mind as I was listening to an interview of Mr. Gautam Singhania, the chairman of Raymond Group. So he was saying that the models which are present in China and Bangladesh, they are not sustainable labor models. because they say that the conditions in which the labor works in China, it's horrific. There are no toilets in the factories. The labor can't even look at if there is a visitor who is visiting the factory, the labor is not supposed to look them in the eye as well. Now in Bangladesh, we know that majority of the staff which is working over there, the laborers, they are largely underage women who are working in those factories, and they again work in horrific conditions. So there was this 2010 collapse of the Rana Plaza in Dhaka, which again was a big travesty, and big companies like Nike and all the other brands like Van Heusen, they have been criticized again and again about these horrific conditions in which these laborers work in. So, what according to you actually is a sustainable model? Because in such kind of conditions, there is going to be a revolt. And we in India, we have already faced a big strike in textile sector way back in 1982, which was led by Datta Samant, which again was a big blow to the textile industry in Bombay. So, what according to you, should be a strategy for somebody who is going to work in textile sector as an HR professional, maybe as an entrepreneur? So, how they should actually be creating a sustainable model for their human resource?
Okay, Sukrit, your China and Bangladesh model is very well known to the globe. Why do the companies give them the orders? Is very simple. It is all economies of scale. Okay, it's purely economics and nothing else. If anyone of you have, I'm sure most some of you have traveled to the US, you will see probably in large stores, you'll see most of the fabric is either from China, Vietnam, even from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. But most of it will be from Bangladesh or China, and it is just because it's just pure economies of scale. It's exploitation to a large extent, I would say, because in the name of costs, these have been offshored to these destinations, and reshored back to the to the to the country of business. Uh, Pitiable labor conditions, we are aware of it, but let's accept that things are not going to change immediately. If I tell you things are going to change tomorrow, no, it's going to change. Let me tell you that. India is well positioned in the textile hub, but it's not the largest. It used to be one of the biggest players in the world at one time. Uh, because of whatever factors, we've lost our dominance. I'm not going to delve into it because much of it is political, and second is our bad strategy. But this China and Bangladesh story will not end. Let's face it, because if we say that tomorrow, because something has happened in China in COVID and all that, things are going to happen and India is going to get a lot of things, maybe. But that's why I said there's a silver lining. I did mention that word, but it's just not going to be switch on and switch off from one place to the other. Bangladesh is dependent on a lot on their textile industry, and Bangladesh textiles are, especially the finished products going to the Western world, are definitely applauded around. They definitely have to also meet up to the extent of the pricing. So it's all depends on the people who are buying. Actually, here world cannot. I don't think any world governing body there is something who dictates all this. Every company has got their labor situation, labor laws, like India has the factory rules, and the Factories Act. I'm sure Bangladesh, China, they also have it. Now, who's inspecting? For example, if Walmart does the quality standards and the inspection, if BJ's, that is, those are large players, large takers from for the Western world. If they do it, then only I think they will improve. But the question is that there's a lot of economics into it. That's the only thing. And these countries are overpopulous countries, and as a result, there's abundant labors and cheap labor. So you cannot hire such cheap labor in US or in the Western world. So for me to give an answer saying that what will happen to the textile industry in India, textile industry in India will stay. Uh, Whether it will be a huge boom going forward, I don't know. This textile strategies are nothing that at least from my limited knowledge tells me that it's going to be a great swing, upward swing. But there is definitely a positivity in the climate, which I think will be there.
Thanks, Sandeep. Only Sukrit is asking questions, no one else.
I have a question related to the same matter. So, as far as textile is concerned, I get it. What about the luxury sector where it's been more focused towards having shops and everything, and because of the COVID-19 thing, everything is shut. So, what kind of roles and what do you think the luxury and retail sector is going to evolve in that aspect?
See, we will.
I have to build on this. I also had this question
Yeah,
in mind.
yeah.
Let me ask you that post-COVID, like if I have to look at a lot of new industries are coming up, and a lot of industries which were doing very well are shutting down or closing down.
Right.
So if I have to look at the various industries I should look forward to take my business upon. Say I have an Axolot, and if I have to grow and if I have to diversify, which are the industries post-COVID I should look forward to going forward to tie up with? This is the continuation. I have a question which Shazmin was asking.
Okay. So I'll just take what Shazin has asked and come back to what you've also carried
Okay.
forward, Devashish. Shazin, I will tell you about luxury. Luxury, when I say, uh, let's take examples. Let's take, for example, the five-star hotels. Let's take the examples of eating out. Let's take the example of going to a shopping mall, buying a buying a good renowned brand, whatever it may be. Then about going and getting a good handbag for yourself, or shoes for yourself, or great branded clothes for yourself. That's going to stay. That's going to stay, but it will take some time to just get into it's like a rebooting model.
Okay.
Everything doesn't die. COVID doesn't make everything die. It's like a pause button, because what is happening is that COVID makes us prudent, because we have seen a lot of things closing down. We've seen jobs going. We've seen salary cuts happening. We've seen shops closing down. We've seen all this, isn't it? So
Yeah.
this is going to stay in the minds of the people for some time for sure. Let's accept it.
Okay.
We ourselves internally in our homes, are we not becoming more prudent in our spends?
Hmm.
We are trying to be a little frugal also in our spends. Why are we?
Absolutely.
That's because COVID is teaching us this. That's because it's better that we go for saving more than spending. But that doesn't mean that everything comes to a grinding halt. It takes time for a person to reboot. The economy is going to, so we're already discussing whether the economy will be a V-shaped economy, whether the economy will be U-shaped economy. Okay, or whether the economy will go for a W-shaped economy. We don't know. There are three shapes of the economy that's been deliberated at all levels, at our corporate levels and at the government levels. So in some industries, it's a V-shaped. Like for example, our company has got tiles, bark products, and cement. Our cement has gone for a complete V. We never expected that. In some industries the same is going for a dull U. So what I'm trying to say, it's all going to be there, but it's going to take some time to reboot and come back. Maybe you'll think twice before wanting to take a flight out of India tomorrow. You think twice, but maybe after a couple of years, you may not think so when things are getting okay. You have an antidote coming in, a vaccine coming in, things are better. People's minds are much more, at peace that we will, something like COVID is not going to happen again. But COVID has taught us, definitely, to be prudent in our spends. COVID has taught us definitely to be ensuring that we have cash in hand, because cash today is king for the company and for any individual today. Right.
Yeah.
I hope I've answered your bit, Shazin.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Uh,
Dinesh, coming to your build-up question as to what are the industries I'm going to do tie up with going forward. You know, I think multiple. Today I think maybe we should keep our complete antenna open today, because that's how we should look into it, because the world is going, it's volatile. It's a VUCA world today. So in a VUCA world, you do not know whether this what I attempted is going to be the most successful thing tomorrow. So there is going to be a short-term strategy and there has to be a mid-term strategy. I do not know whether we will ever have a long-term strategy because this is my personal. I think it's going to be short-term and mid-term. So we should take strategy towards certain of 0 to 3 and 0 to 5 years today. Gone are those balance sheets. Today, every company is going quarter to quarter, if not month to month, on their cash and collection and everything. So Easter years, they used to go probably once in half a year. Today it's quarter. Now it's every month. So every month, look at performance evaluation for a moment. If an employee, it's not monthly evaluation. It used to be a mid-year and then a final year review. It's not monthly evaluation. So if I have to say which are the companies one has to get associated with for driving business, I'll be wrong to saying only 5, 6 company and not saying the others because you never know today. Look at the stock exchange today, for example. One company today goes 20% high, the next, the companies which we think will go high doesn't move. So it's a VUCA world. So we need to adapt to the VUCA world. But yes, I feel technology will definitely rule. When I say technology, I mean to say, again, I repeat, the artificial intelligence will be there to stay, at least for the next. This is going to be a new age for them. Like we are into Zoom, we are into Meet, we are into the team. This is going to stay. This world is going to be the new normal for all of us. We definitely are going to have a lot amount of bot way of working, machine learning into working. So this is also going to stay. So these are definitely new age companies. E-commerce is going to stay. E-commerce companies are going to stay. Your Amazons of the world are going to go up like anything. The Geos of the world are going to swing it like anything. They are definitely going to be the new age Mughals, which was the early years. You used to have somebody else. They are going to take over from them for sure. Of course, the large multinationals like the Nestle's of the world, the Hindustan Unilevers of the world, or the Colgate Palmolives of the world, they are re-strategizing themselves because India is a very big country. We have got still we've got around 60% of everything into the villages. So there's the hinterland and the villages and the towns and the cities. So to complete change for India takes time because it's a huge country. It's not a small European country that you can change it with a swing. This is a huge country. So if your cities change, that does not mean the same change is reflected in your villages. So if you are getting probably a tie-up with a company like a Cisco or something in a city, you can always be with a company which does business in the hinterland and in the villages, probably some other company. So I'm just saying that it's going to be a diversified world today. Everybody is going to have some place, but these are the areas where we can definitely explore. I hope I've been able to answer that part.
When I was thinking about that question, the first thing that really struck my mind was the IT and the artificial intelligence sector. But then I think after what you've said, I would surely rethink on it.
Yeah, because you see, we should not be focused into one thing. Because again and again, I repeat, we are a large nation today. You can't,
Absolutely.
and we should not be myopic in thinking only what is Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore doing. There are other cities, there are other towns, and one again has to be flexible in working out of any place today, because every place can be a gold mine.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sir, any thoughts on the migrant labor crisis that we are having right now? Because that is going to affect the manufacturing companies a lot. Because much of the labor that they used to employ, this all was the migrant labor. From what I know, the much of the labor in the industrial hubs, like places like this belt in Gujarat, Kalol, and then the industrial hub in Maharashtra. Then after that, you had the industries in Haryana. All these industries were dependent on migrant laborers. So now, since they have left and their mood is not of coming back as of now, how do you think these industries, how would they actually open up? Because reopening is again a big crisis for them. Because there is no labor, how would they operate in this?
Very nice question, because this is going to be important for especially for large manufacturing companies which actually need migrant labor to for their day-to-day work. They are definitely going to be impacted. And let me tell you, to the extent that I was reading a newspaper yesterday, e-newspaper, I would say, that some developer has given airline tickets for his migrant people to come back. So you see, people are wooing them to come back to the work, basically, because you don't have a choice to. Now, if you do not take migrant labor, what is the choice you have? You have to take local labor, right? Now, local labor is a crisis in every state, because every state there are certain work which is done by a particular community of a particular state. That's the issue. For example, let me tell you, refractory bricks. Your specialized people for refractory bricks comes from one district of Orissa, and they are the people who actually know how to change refractory bricks in a furnace, in a blast furnace, or kilns, and all these places. But that doesn't mean others don't know. But they are specialized, and people don't want to take chances with rookies. That's the issue. Now, likewise, you have a lot of migrant labor coming, as you rightly said, from Gujarat, Halol, and all those places where there's large volumes used, even near Delhi, even in Mumbai. So there is definitely going to be a crisis for some time, for sure. And it all depends on those companies and on those entrepreneurs, how they're going to woo them back. Otherwise, their business suffers. That's for sure. Like some companies who realized it fast, what they did is that they erected temporary sheds within their what to say premises, and for the last 2 months have been feeding them, have been keeping them, and they've not gone. So those companies have done it. They knew that these are required. When it opens back from lockdown, the first thing they require are these people who are going to do their cleaning up, who are going to set the ball rolling for operations. So now those companies who did not pay salaries, those people went off. So it depends again on the foresight of companies. Why did you leave them in the first place? So there's going to be a challenge. Shukri. That's a good question.
So this is Akanksha. My question is specifically to the HR, like human resources ones, that due to the present scenario of work from home and the companies being more digital, do you think that there would be less job opportunities for the upcoming people in the field of human resources?
Personally speaking, no. I don't think so. Why? Because I feel HR with work from home, it sets up two challenges for HR. And work from home needs to be monitored. Your productivity from home needs to be monitored. How will you do your performance appraisals from home? So there has to be something to do with it. You know, we may have less numbers of people in HR, maybe, but people with more multi-skilling, people who can bring more value to the table. That is how I read it. Less jobs for HR. Well, I wouldn't bracket it like that. I would say jobs are always there for the better people, for the best people. So one has to be there, as and one has to rise also there. Even if you get a job, you have to grow also. So you have to always learn, and you have to always beat yourself from what you were better yesterday. That's important. Don't compare, I would say. So always beat yourself from what you were yesterday. So if you beat yourself what you were yesterday through your learning curve, you actually are successful. And that's how you create your own niche in your organization. Number one. Now about jobs in within HR, uh, again I told you, companies will have different asks today. Every company is going to have a different ask today. The HR role will definitely get from exterior IR to HR to probably more to do with EHR, I would say. Like for example, we are all working from home. Now, not a single aspect is untouched in HR. Not a single employee has told us that I didn't receive this on time. Rather, he's received it today before time. Why? Why? Because it's now a digital world. It's moving faster. Let me tell you that. Today it's moving faster. So any person who can adapt to this digital world today is a winner. So there will be jobs for the winners for sure. So I'm sure you all are winners. So don't worry about not getting jobs.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
We have, yeah, please.
Hello. Good evening, sir. So I want to ask that there is small debate going about on work from home productivity, like how much productive people are. Some set of people are saying that it's very productive because we are reducing travel time, having flexible work hours, and other set of people are like no, because we don't have a structured environment to work, don't have personal space to work. So so what you have to say about this?
See, if you um, if you are in a Western world, work from home is not a norm. It's not a new normal. It's a normal thing in the Western world. I'm talking. For us, it has become for the IT sector. Work from home is no problem. It should be a normal thing in my opinion. Issue is with some other companies which thought of coming to offices. Now, for certain uh, roles, I feel there is no need to come to office. There's just no need to come to office. Even in HR, if you ask me, if there are 10 people in corporate HR coming to office, every day 10 need not come to office. A 50% population of HR is enough to come to office. By saying this, I'm saying this because it helps. It helps to have smaller office spaces. It saves your rent for the company. And today, why do you need a designated cabin? Why do you need a designated chair? You can have hot boxes for your offices, isn't it? You can have you don't need it. Every desk can be equipped with the technology, and that's it. And you should just be able to say that I'm logging on from office today or I'm logging on from home today. Companies probably need to spend that money for the employees Wi-Fi or maybe for the employees digital connects. That is something the company needs to invest on them going forward. That's what I see. Work from home, it depends on the employee also, not of the company, I would say. It depends on the employee how productive he is making himself or herself. That's important. At the end of the day, what the company was wanting is the job from him, nothing else. So the productivity part of that lies not only on the employed side, I think it lies more on the employee person, whether he or she is making himself or herself productive or not. Yes, the house front may have uh, a lot of issues. Houses may have lack of space sometimes. Houses may have more people in a residential because every family is different from the other. So now there is a lot of counseling and a lot of learning and a lot of knowledge and a lot of discussions one should have with the house front also, that this is going to be my new normal. So I need that little bit of corner and a little bit of time as if I am in office. That's what has to be also worked out from the house front. So it's a yes and no answer both to you, Soumya. So I feel that, but work from home for certain functions will definitely be stay.
Thank you, sir.
Soumya, for me, work from home has become more productive than work from office.
Correct.
I can give you my example. It is by far more productive than getting into office and doing that. But a very good answer by Sandeep that instead of spending money on rent of office and electricity and AC, if you spend on that people, the same money on people, develop the technology,
Yeah.
digitize more, and the productivity of the person becomes much better, and you get the output much better.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
We are already Yeah, please carry on. Anyone with a question? We are already an hour plus now. Don't worry, if you have questions, ask. We will keep Sandeep. We will not let him go.
I had two questions,
Again, no, Shazleen and Supreet. No, Shazleen and Supreet.
but nobody's asking. Then let me at least ask.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Okay, so I had two questions. One with HR laws perspective. So especially when I look at today's scenario and I look at companies' law, so there have been many companies that have been registered under the Companies Act, and 40% of organizations in India are registered under the Shops and Entities Act, even after actually functioning like a limited company. And because of which there have been a lot of hustles when it comes to the decision making process with respect to labor. So what do you think, what kind of changes would come over there? And my second question is with respect to HR policies within an organization. What kind of changes would come post COVID-19?
Coming back to
Second question is a brilliant one.
Of course it is.
I'll try to answer whatever little I can state. First one is on the laws. I think the government today has already changed certain things. They have come up with called the Code of Laws. So the Code of Wages is one law. So the government has done changes, not massive though, but it is. We need more of laws to come. Government made a very balancing act. Currently, government has merged the laws. Like
Right.
4 laws has been merged as Code of Wages. You get the point. So all this has come. The government is yet to come up with some laws which are actually more employer friendly. So, but there are stakes around. As I told you, it's a huge country. You can't satisfy everybody. You cannot be also be partisan toward one part of the community and leave aside the workman part and the unions part. So the government is treading a very, I would say, a thin line here. But there's more to do. More to do. Now, when you come to the Shops and Establishments Act, which is one is the Factories Act, governed by for the manufacturing units. Manufacturing units which are run by power, which have got 20 plus people, are all covered by factories, are covered through the Factories Act. Offices, commercial establishments, warehouses, they are covered under the Shops and Establishment Act. Now, Shops and Establishments Act is not similar act as a Factories Act, because Factories Act involves a lot of shifts. There are factory rules and regulations. They are for bargainable people. They are for non-bargainable people. All things are there. So Shops and Establishment Act is basically for offices. So those are going to stay. Now there's going to be some tweaks for sure. But again, I told you the government is playing it very safe today. Certain tweaks which I see today is going to be on working hours. The government today has fixed working hours for about 9 hours or something. That's going to probably increase to 12, if I'm not wrong. So the employer will have a flexibility, because these discussions are going on at senior levels in the government cabinets and all that. Because some of us, we come to know because industry is being asked for advice through the forums of AICII and SOPAM, they ask. So through that we come to know. One is probably going to be a 12-hour duration. So the companies will have the flexibility to hire people for a longer duration. This is one which I see. Number two, the work from home factor will also bring in that companies can engage people to work from home. The gig economy factor will come into play also. So you did not hire somebody for the next 30 years of your tenure. For example, today we give an appointment letter saying that you will retire on so and so day when you attain the age of 58 or 60. That may not happen, because we are now moving to niche skill job areas. For example, we may hire people only for a limited time of say 1.5 to 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. Depends on the requirement of the job. So every job may not be tomorrow a fixed job, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So that can be for 2 years and then can be renegotiated amicably and then again a fresh contract will be made.
Hmm.
And of course, that's two-way decision. It's not going to be one-way traffic. The person who takes the job also has a onus whether he or she wants to renew or not. So that's again going to be a critical aspect, which was earlier we used to call it contract labor. So we may all go into an FTE mode, that is a fixed term employee mode. In the West, if you see, everybody is on FTE, from the CEO downwards, everybody. So that is something probably India will see going ahead, especially in the corporate world, which I definitely strongly see. So these changes are something which probably I'm looking with bated breath because this will definitely open up the economy. You can hire people to what you want. The person can join a company as per his skills. Because if I am very good at something and the company joins me, okay, I join for a year, I have my price for that, isn't it? So it's going to be an interesting turnaround in the next 2 to 5 years. I feel it's going to be a very interesting turnaround for HR professionals, and that will be the demand for HR professionals because they need to understand because the competencies which they used to see for an individual are going to change. Is what I'm trying to say. When you go to hire, you go for a set of competencies. So those
Right.
competencies probably are going to take a little bit of reshift and re-gear. And so the HR fraternity on the whole has to do a little bit of unlearning and relearning both. You have to unlearn, relearn, and readapt, and then hire.
What about the HR policies, Chris?
Okay, sorry, I missed that. HR policies internally in the companies is going to definitely be relooking. For example, your travel policy may have a big relook.
Right.
Do you need to travel every time? If you need to travel, you see, you can definitely do away with 60% of your travel policy because that's going to be the first. Already, most companies have already done it, and ours is no exception. Also, we've also done it because with this web technology, half your travel is not done. You don't need to travel every day, which you used to do. Probably for a 2 hour meeting, you used to travel all the way from Bangalore to Delhi and spend the airport prices and the hotel fares, and after that, meeting people and all that, 25,000 rupees. You can do it on the web. Once in a quarter, you can do that. But what I'm trying to say is that is going to reduce, number one. People look at sales. A lot of web-based sales will happen. Of course, physically going and meeting will also happen, but that will reduce. Web-based will increase. So you need to probably have your travel. You need to have a new policy on web-based sales, web-based travel, and all that. That policy is going to come for many companies, and most companies are already working on it. Now, when you say other policies, your hiring policies, all your hiring policies are going to go onboarding will be happening completely online. So your forms of hirings and all that, there's not going to be, I don't think most of the companies of new age companies have done away with all those mundane uh, forms. They're all electronically generated forms. You download it, you fill it up, you upload and scan it and send it. So most of the companies have done it. Hiring, onboarding will be before you join, everything is filled in by you itself. So you get a link of if companies are on ERP portal, you get the link before you join, you fill up everything. So once you join, everything is done for you. So this is the new age of hiring is going to be. So policies about hiring is going to take a reshift on that. When it's performance management, for example, performance management is completely going to be online. Of course, the feedback session sometimes, like this is going to be a feedback between on the screen because you don't need to travel to give a feedback anymore, unless and until you really feel you need to give it by calling that person. That's different. So your feedback sessions will change. Your performance management is going to get online. Your hiring is online. Onboarding is online. Offboarding is also online. So if you see the employee life cycle today, your payroll is also online. Your taxation is online. So entire life cycle today for an employee from an HR perspective is getting digital. So the new age HR manager who's going to be an HR manager has to adapt to this type of change. He can't expect that I am sitting at cloud nine and sorry, this is it. Those days are gone. Those are passe. So it's basically going to be employee connect more on the web today. Today, for example, if you go to hire somebody on the web, you go to fire also, it can be on the web. So this is going to be a completely different dunya for every one of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's better for at least HR professionals to adapt quickly, because it is the HR professionals who are going to run this completely in the company. For example, the board meeting of our company happened online. There were 3 board members outside India. They connected through the Zoom call, and the board meeting happens online. You can show in your screen all your figures. You can have polling done. You can do everything today. So why do you need to come? Spend money on business class travel, stay in 5-star deluxe hotels, and do a board meeting. So things are going to be different. That's why I'm saying companies are going to be frugal. There's going to be prudence in when you spend. Policies will look different compared to what it was yesterday. So there's a lot of job for HR people. If you ask me. Somebody asked me what is going to be the role of HR. So you see, somewhere I think these are the roles going to be in the future.
Right. Actually, I recollect. Sorry, yeah. Debashish, why don't you say?
The HR, there is around group of 2 HR teams here, around 20 odd people.
Okay.
They have been assigned with a project to create the new HR framework and policy of Axela. So they are working towards that as a project. Hence this question.
No, I think I don't know if I've been able to highlight some of your points.
Definitely you have. And actually, I recollect one of the movies that I've watched when there's a consulting firm hired to fire people, and you have people going at different locations, and then there's a new proposition which is put to do it digitally.
Correct.
And how it impacts people. So, yeah.
So you see, again, I'm repeating, you need to have the mindset and the flexible mindset to adapt to changes. That's very important, because the attitude of an individual here will play the biggest role, at least for the HR fraternity. The more flexible you are, the more adaptable you are to change, will make things very easy for you all to get this going. That's my personal belief.
Thank you.
So clearly, Sandeep, if I have to summarize, you have told 4 or 5 areas in totality through your examples. One is, you have to innovate, you have to be a thought leader, you have to be technology driven. So applied thinking and technology is a big thing. Second is drive. The first point which grew you up is drive. Third is engage. And fourth is adaptability to change. So this is what I had been telling them to develop their potential, and from your answers, it all boils down to these 4 or 5 bigger areas. What our youngsters have to go and really work around themselves. As you said, look at themselves on their eye in the mirror and reflect and create their unique differentiators, which will help them run, grow, and transform in the corporate world.
Absolutely.
So if no one has any further question, then I have a last question to Sandeep, which is very, very myopic in nature, right? I want simple answer, no diplomatic answers. That if I go to an interview, or if I want to become an entrepreneur and go to a promoter, or let me put it that way. So Sandeep, there are more than 60 campuses out here, students from. So you are assigned the task of getting into the 60 campuses and picking up students, picking up for your organization. And everywhere there are 100 candidates, and you have only 3 vacancies. What are the 3 things you will look at to choose that 3 candidates from that campus out of 100?
Very easy. Very easy.
I think you have to be very, very specific here. You cannot be general.
I am very easy. I will only give marks on attitude, personality, and confidence. That's it. For me, nothing matters. If the person has got attitude, confident, personality, the overall personality, when I say is communication skills and others, for me, those are my
Impactful communication, positive and energyful, vibrant attitude, attitude to win.
Attitude,
and the third one is what?
Attitude to win, attitude to excel, attitude to learn. Confidence, a confident person confidence is also not only in communication, confidence in walk, confidence in communication, confidence in stating a subject. Confidence is also telling very clearly, if I don't know a subject, I don't know a subject. That is also confidence, isn't it? And that is basically giving trustworthiness. So I give more emphasis on that. For me, that is more matters. I can teach a person. I don't need to see your marks. For me, this is more important. I believe. And when I go to hire, I see any person, not only in HR, mind you, anywhere. I see these are the qualities an organization should have to have excellent human beings in the organization. So
Great answer, Sandeep.
yeah, that's it. Develop yourself. It's an easy word, let me tell you. Don't make it complicated.
So, my dear interns, you have heard it from the CHRO that what are the 3 things required for you when you get to an interview or when you get to whatever you want to win. Please adapt to these 3 things, learn these 3 things, look at yourself in the mirror, and ensure you are differentiated enough with these 3 things in life. With this, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sandeep, for your time. It was a really an enriching experience. Great to see you after a very long time. I hope the interns have learned a lot from today's interaction and they will implement this learning to actual execution in their routine life once they get into the corporate life. Thank you very much, everyone.
I would like to thank Debashish, you and Asarat actually, because this has made I personally like to interact with youngsters because I feel they're far more intelligent than me, and I have this notion that I always also want to hire somebody who is more intelligent than me. If I can hire somebody who is far more intelligent than me, then I think I am building a far stronger cadre in the company than for tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this session with me. Thank you.